Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing? So I hope everybody's having an awesome weekend. This is 50 pips rocking and rolling 1st of June 2014. I'm not making trade calls or recommendations because you and only you are responsible for the trades you may decide to take. And the fact that you're listening to this means you've read, you understand, you accept all the disclaimers on the blog, understanding that we're just doing this for educational purposes only. So guys, what's going on? Not a lot really in terms of charts. I think really this is going to be the interesting week, right? Keep in mind that a lot of people will be focused on ECB, but the whole week is going to be pretty important. We got some bank holidays across the board, but we'll start with the China PMI tonight, and then basically there's a steady stream of information and data out, right? So not only from Australia, from Europe, and from UK too, but really there are going to be a lot of stuff out of China, right? With a PMI, which HSBC, the final PMI, and again we've got a rate statement out of Australia. We've got the BOC. So Bank of Canada on the wires. We're going to have, so that's another rate statement. Then we've got a rate statement out of the UK. We've got a rate statement out of the Europe with a press conference. And then, the little cherry on top of the cake is going to be non-farm payrolls on Friday. So don't be fooled into thinking that any big risk that hits the market on a specific day will necessarily determine everything. It's really about this week and how we close this week, and more importantly, what happens on that Thursday and Friday block of action. Look at those 2 days as really, really important days. So I'm going to try and focus on Forex and keep it short and simple. But in terms of the equity side, keep in mind those levels we looked at last time on the ES. I think the most interesting thing on the equity side is that as equities continue to press higher, NASDAQ's holding a bit weaker. So my focus in terms of the equity side will definitely be NASDAQ. In terms on the European side, I'll be looking at Bund pressing those highs. That's going to be very interesting. And in terms of the metals, I'll be focused on gold and understanding that it looks like we could still break lower. We could see some kind of a range shift if below in those 1250s into that 1200, but we would expect to see some kind of support there. So those will be interesting. In terms of the Forex side, there's a couple of things to keep an eye out for, and we're at key levels. If you look at the Swissy, this is something I'll be looking at. I usually don't talk about Swissy also because we're not really, we prefer to trade more fluid currencies than than BOJ or SNB. But really the Swissy is interesting because you've got this protection of the 200 day moving average and the 90 level, and you see that sellers are coming in to protect that. So keep an eye on this level and keep an eye on what will happen, especially on Thursday with the ECB, right? Because that could clearly have a very important effect on Swiss, how flows will go into the Swiss franc. So that's something you want to keep an eye out for. And the focus here is going to be how we hold on daily closes above or below this 200 day and that 90 level, which will likely be pivotal for action. Okay, in terms of you see this replicating itself on EJ, right? EJ also back into this 200 moving average. This is a big pivotal zone. We said, it's all about how we behave here, right? Right down in this area. What happens? Are we going to catch bidders or not? But as long as that 200 day holds, as long as we start getting a daily close below the 139, we'd expect price to try and take a stab right back into the shaded area in that chop zone we looked at for a long time, where as opposed to that, a close below that 200 day, a close below the 138s tends, we'd expect this to see a lot of pressure on and possibly to see a fairly sharp acceleration, all the way back down into those 136s. Okay, so clearly this is also at a pivotal level. One of these pivotal levels which we're not that interested in, a lot of people were talking about, and we also talked about, and basically it was this Kiwi coming back into the 100 DMA. Now what we said is we're not too interested in the reaction of the 100 DMA because we have this level just above that previous support that we consider to be pivotal. So we really need to see a close back above that level to see a bit of pressure off, and that level's coming in at 85.00. So as long as we're holding below the 85.00, we consider this could potentially continue to trade with a heavy tone, and especially seeing the week we have ahead, this could continue to try and make its way back down towards that 200 DMA. On the other hand, if we close back above that 85.00, then we'd expect this to potentially start getting a bit of a bid tone and try to accelerate and move back higher into those other resistances. Okay, so key level here, but not as extended as the other ones at the 200s, right? In terms of Aussie, we caught a bid there ahead of that 200 moving average. We're back into that resistance. So look at this whole level. We talked about the 93.30 even on Twitter. We talked about that level for a long time. That's really a pivotal zone. So if you start to see daily closes above that level, look at this most likely to try and challenge that whole pattern, that whole series of lower highs, to try and take back a stab back higher and press and make a run towards those higher levels into those 95s. But if we keep on getting sellers keeping pressure on, then we would expect this to continue to come back down into the 91.60s. And we wouldn't necessarily expect that 200 DMA to be so strong if we move back down into it from here. Now again, we're looking quite quickly at these charts. If you want to look at want some more detail on these, especially on the Aussie also, you can look back on the YouTube video we posted last week, which is an hour-long recording when we went through things in a bit more detail. We do those every once in a while. Try and keep these updates as short as possible. And then finally on Euro and Cable, what's going on Euro and Cable? So we talked about Euro. We had this chart up, right? And we said below, we'd expect this to try and catch a bit of a bounce and try and move back into these 37.70s here. We said it'd be healthy to see some kind of a bounce coming into the market, but we saw absolutely no bounce at all, and it continued to break lower. Now, it continued to break lower really without a lot of acceleration. A lot of the moves were technical, but not a lot of acceleration. So broadly speaking, we continued to press. Not surprising, nobody really wanting to step in and take big positions ahead of this big week we've got here. So this is the week where everything's going to play out, not last week. So what happened is we continued to press lower, taking some weak players out, but right here we're closing right around this 200 day. So keep in mind that this 200 day is going to be pivotal for action. In terms of resistance to the upside, you're going to have the 100 now. That's going to be resistance protecting these 37.70s. So this will be short term to the upside. That's going to be the resistance should we start to close above that 200 DMA. But as long as we keep on closing below the 200 DMA, expect the next support to try to attract, which is the 35.60s. Okay, so in terms of tighter range, we'd be looking at 35.60s to the downside and those 37.70s to the upside. In terms of bigger levels for the week, should we get aggressive bids coming into the market? So that means daily closes above 37.70s, we'd expect 39s to come into play. Should we get an aggressive move back down below this 200 day and get traction, the first big level we'd be focusing on would be those 37.70s, and on a break of that, then those 33s will definitely start to come into play if we get a daily close below that level. Okay, so again, keep in mind that the big question is what is being priced in for Thursday. So again, I think you probably have to come over to planet Earth from Mars not to know what everybody's expecting in terms of policy change from the ECB rate cuts, etc., and all that stuff. So I think there's clearly there's clearly potential for the market to be disappointed rather than impressed with what's coming out. I think it would take a lot less to disappoint, and it would take a lot more than what's expected to really impress the market. So also keep that into mind, right? So right now it's all about that 200. For the short-term basis, we discussed that. We were talking about those 4 hours. So if you look at this fairly classical action as we go towards the end of the week, right, we've had a steady stream of selling, quite normal. The market doesn't really have a real reason to bounce, as shorts can simply trail their stops and continue to play the ground lower. And then as we go towards the end of the week, we had this nice little reversal kind of on the 4-hour, right? We press those lows, we come in, market tried to clip those lows, bam, nice little reversal candle, failure to take out lows. So that was pretty much a fairly clear sign that we get a bit of a little profit taking rally. So like shorts taking some profit, some longs coming into the market, and that's the little press we're getting. But rest assured, right here, it's just it could be the beginning of that move all the way back into the 37s. But the bulls really have to prove themselves. And we saw the same kind of action on cable, right? On cable, we discussed these levels, and we said going into the week that what we were looking at was these two levels, right? Daily closes back above the 68.50. We expected this to hold a bid tone for a reversal back up and to continue to play potentially for a grind back into the 71s. And daily closes below the 68.00, we'd expect it to catch a bit of a heavy tone and try and move all the way back down into this key support zone. And that's exactly what happened, right? So pressure on, move back into that support zone. And if it was going to catch a strong bid anywhere after this aggressive move to the downside, this was the zone we'd expect it to catch a bid, right? And the same kind of scenario, the same kind of action as Euro happened, right? We moved back down into that zone, market continued to take out longs, and then we come in, we tried to press lower, couldn't get any traction, couldn't attract any new sellers at low, took out some weak longs, bam, reversal, a nice little move to take some little trades to the upside, long side into end of the week, right? But really, the pressure is still on. We need to see some more aggressive buying coming in. So again, unless we start closing, especially early in the week, back above 68, this is going to be really continue to be pressure on. To the downside, it's going to be very, very interesting what happens around those 66.50s. That's a key level. If that gives on a daily close, then expect this to potentially to try and break lower. Now, the last thing I'd say is that keep in mind, try and be how should I say? Try and look at it in terms of what the odds of certain things happening are going to be going into the week. Keep in mind the context of what has happened last week. Keep in mind that a lot of the big nobody's going to come in and take huge bets in the early part of the week, likely, unless we get some strong data or something coming out. Most likely we'll still be positioning and squaring. A lot of people have already made their bet. Don't be fooled by intraday action. Again, keep in mind it's really about the whole week. It's not necessarily about what happens a specific day apart from maybe on Thursday. It's about what happens on the week. And don't forget that after Thursday, you've got the non-farm payrolls on Fridays that could also really change what the market is, how the market is interpreting things, or how the market is pricing things vis-a-vis Thursday. So it's all about the week. Have a great one. Again, there will be plenty of more weeks to trade, so there's no need to go out and be a hero this week. Keep it tight. See you guys for London Open tomorrow. Hope you enjoy the update. Take care, guys. Talk to you guys soon.